Hi, welcome back. Well, it's sort of landed in my lap. This is pretty exciting, but we've got Jaime Jorge, violinist extraordinaire in the studio. Thanks for being here, Jaime.
I'm so excited to be here, Kent. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, now you've done about, what, 10 Australian tours now?
This is about my 10th, give or take, one or two.
That's incredible.
It is always wonderful to come back to Oz and paradise, I think.
And I understand you've got a 25th sort of anniversary DVD floating around that's already 2 years old. So,
that's right.
What, 27 years of playing and ministering through music? Does that make you a veteran?
Makes me old, I think is what it does. I feel old sometimes, but at the same time, when you do something you love and you do it for the Lord, it revitalizes you and re-energizes you, so I feel young as well.
Yeah, wow. Now, I'd really like to go, right back to your childhood, because it's a really interesting story. You grew up in Cuba, the beautiful Caribbean island there of Cuba, but obviously troubled politically.
Right.
Now, was your family under particular pressure there, like being a Christian family? Your father was a pastor, is that right?
Being a pastor, he was pretty much singled out. And we experienced, all of us, especially him, persecution and threats. However, a lot of Christians went through that. When you're old enough to go through the military service, it was mandatory, it was compulsory, so everybody had to go. Imagine what it was like. Some young people chose not to bear arms, and that caused all kinds of problems. When you went to school as a child, every student wore a uniform, and every student wore a scarf. And that scarf meant that you were a young communist, a pioneer. So when you're lining up with hundreds of young people every day at the beginning of the school day and you're not wearing your scarf, you're going to be singled out immediately. And so the teachers or the director or the principal would come and say, "Why aren't you wearing your scarf?" "Well, I'm not a communist." "What do you mean you're not a communist? How can you not be a communist?" "Why not?" "Well, because I'm a Christian."
You're Cuban, therefore you're a communist.
That's exactly right.
Comes with a package, yeah.
And so it would start, a list of questions that they would ask you. They already knew the answers, but it was just almost like a daily type of interrogation process. Yeah, to harass you.
Wow. But nevertheless, you picked up a violin. It's obviously you took to it, like a duck to water, a bit of a, I guess what we call a child prodigy. Are you comfortable with that sort of terminology?
I don't know, but I guess we can call it whatever.
But you actually had an opportunity to travel to Russia, was it? To actually learn the violin from the best and brightest, and your career was headed.
Well, that's
in a
what
pretty
they
special
said
place.
anyway.
Yeah.
They gave me an opportunity, a scholarship, to go to Moscow and study at the Moscow Conservatory of Music. The only caveat was I had to renounce my faith in God.
Wow.
And so my parents had taught me in the ways of the Lord. They taught me that it is better to obey God rather than men, as it says in the Bible. So I said, I'm not willing to do that.
Wow.
And they said, "Well, that's okay, because you're never going to amount to anything anyway." So when he left, I was basically walking away from perhaps the biggest opportunity of my life in many ways.
How old were you at this stage?
9.
9. Wow.
But, in countries where we suffer for our faith, I think we were a lot more ready to respond and a lot more ready to stand up for the Lord than in places where we don't have to face those challenges, Australia, the United States, Canada are countries where you have all kinds of freedoms. You don't really have to be put through that kind of trial by fire, And so to me it was an easy decision because it's what my parents had taught me. At the same time, I trusted that God had something better for me. And sometimes on this earth we tend to define success as money, influence, power. But success for God, I think, is something completely different. Success for Him is allowing Him to use us in the way that He's already planned to glorify Him and further His kingdom.
Yeah, wow.
And so He had something better for my family. We were able to leave Cuba not long after that and go to the U.S., where I had many opportunities to continue to develop the talents that He had given me.
Did you find in the US, I mean, obviously you're out of that sort of situation where there's a lot of, political pressure or persecution on you for your faith, but you're a young boy, a teenager, a lot of peer pressure, trying to fit in desperately. Was that also a challenge to your faith?
In a different way, yes, because I went to a Catholic university and I saw things that I had never seen before.
Mm-hmm.
You know, young people went out and they went dancing and they went drinking, and had never
your
been
family was
exposed.
Seventh-day Adventist, and
Mm-hmm.
so
And
quite a different culture, yeah.
Most certainly.
Yeah.
So at that point, then I had to make a decision. You know, am I going to not do these things, or am I going to do what I do because this is what my parents have taught me, or what I've learned in church, or because this is really what I believe in my faith and in my relationship with God? You know,
Wow.
so different circumstances, but in the end, we still have to make those choices on our own. And hopefully we will make them for God's honor and glory.
Yeah, wow. So you had an opportunity to do just about anything you wanted. You were headed for medical school,
Yes.
I understand. But you chose music ministry. Was that a direct call on your life from God, or how did that come about?
It was, because that's why I walked away from medical school. I never wanted the life that I have now,
Yeah.
of doing music ministry, because I know that it is not easy. I mean, when you take the glamour away from the really well-known artists and musicians that have made it big, music ministry is exactly that. It is a faith journey, basically. And so I just figured the Lord...
Sorry, what do you mean by it being a faith journey?
Well, you don't necessarily have a salary. You don't know where your next paycheck's going to come from. If you have a good concert, you do well. If you don't have a good concert, or you don't get churches inviting you, you're sitting at home, you're not going to be making much of an income.
And
so,
if someone asks you, what are you doing this time next year?
Yeah.
So maybe you don't know.
I don't know, not yet. So you have to allow God to really open the doors, and at the same time you can't just sit around waiting for the phone to ring off the hook. So it's a little bit of a process of doing something that God has given us the ability to do, and then waiting for Him to open up some doors. And this 25th anniversary concert and DVD that we put together has actually opened up some amazing opportunities for us. Somebody saw that and gave it to a few other people, and I had an invitation a couple of years ago to play for the President of the United States.
Wow.
And, you know, other things of that nature. The bottom line is, we don't know what God is going to use to reach others for His honor and glory. We just have to be ready.
Wow, that's incredible. And so after meeting the United States, the President of the United States, he's now warming up relationships with Cuba. Was that your doing?
No. Even though I would have wanted that to happen a long time ago.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm not going to get into the political process, but, you know, in many ways it is a good thing to start to open up the doors, because the people of Cuba for more than 60 years have been politically and economically very repressed.
And isolated too.
And isolated, for sure.
Yeah.
So when I was there not long ago, I saw things happening and doors opening like I had never seen them before, and I praise the Lord for that. At the same time, God uses difficulty and challenge to get us to come closer to Him.
The refiner's fire, as the Bible puts it. Wow.
We don't often think of God when we're comfortable, when we have our gadgets, we have our iPhones, we have our remote controls and our nice laptop computers. We think of Him when the car breaks down, or we're in the middle of nowhere and we can't phone somebody to come and get us, you know. So God can still work some amazing things in those places, and maybe that's why He allows some countries or situations to drag on for longer, so that people can come to depend on Him and not themselves.
Wow. Look, I was going to ask you, how do audiences, respond to your ministry and your music, but I think, we can see, really clearly that you have an inspirational story, and I know that, you're moving people all around the world. Would you like to come back just after the break and play something for us, just to finish the program off?
I'd be happy to, yeah.
Thanks so much. That'll be coming up straight after the break.